took my next guest a lot of time to work out not only what she wanted to do in life, but also how exactly she should go about doing it. She's the founder of the modern hospice movement, which sets out to provide specialised care for the terminally ill, using techniques which enable patients to pass away with dignity and in surroundings of cheer and comfort. Ladies and gentlemen, Dame Cicely Saunders. Let us suppose, Dame Cicely, there are people who do not know what a hospice is. Could you tell us briefly what a hospice is?
Well, it may be a place, but sometimes it's just a team of people who are concerned to help patients really live up until they die as part of their family and as well as they possibly can. And it often is much longer than anybody expected.
And it's full, on the whole, of cheerful people, or the place that you have organised at St Christopher's has a lot of cheerful people in it.
St Christopher's is surprisingly cheerful, considering some of the problems that people are tackling. But you don't have to be cheerful all the time. You can be miserable if
you want to.
Yes.
Is it often helpful to let people be miserable?
I think it's very important to cry for some things they're very worth crying about.
Now, explain some of the characters that you've had to deal with there. There's a nice man called Sam.
Well, we told the story of Sam in our annual report this year because he did make a great impression. I used to be taking visitors around and there was an empty bed and I'd have to say, well, Sam eats out because he'd always be out at the local pub. And he spent really more of his time out there. His two passions were whiskey and being there in the pub.
Yeah. And you supplied the whiskey later, didn't
Well,
you?
when it really came to the point when Sam honestly couldn't get there, the pub used to come and fetch him, they were marvellous, and Sister had to tell him. And she said, well, we can give you the whiskey here. And she said, it's not the Scotch girl, it's the atmosphere.
which you couldn't get there. Can you actually take the sting out of death?
I don't think you can take the sting of parting. But you can do a lot of things to make that parting easier, to bring out the strengths in the family who are going to live on afterwards, and indeed in the patient himself or herself. And so that over and over again, we have people saying to us, you know, it seems extraordinary, but that was one of the best times we ever had.
Why do you think it is that we are suddenly turning our faces towards the hospice, and why have we not had them since ever?
Well, there were a lot of very good hospices started really at the turn of the century, and they went on caring most lovingly. But there were a tremendous lot of therapeutic advances in the 1940s, 1950s, which both put a tremendous emphasis on active, ongoing care, and also gave us the possibility, and I moved into the hospice movement at that time, of using new tools to cope with pain, to help breathlessness, to understand how families felt, and to use what was there for them available.
And that's there at St Christopher's?
That's the hospice, yes.
Now, your own story is a little extraordinary in a way. Were you a happy child?
No, I was much too big, I was awkward and shy.
You mean physically?
All round. I was always falling over myself. And falling over other people too.
And shy at school?
Yes, I wasn't popular. I found it very difficult to fit in, and I think an awful lot of people feel that they're the only one like this, and I think a whole crowd of us have gone through that part of our lives not finding it very easy.
Did you have sympathetic school teachers, for instance?
I had one tremendous one who went on to run the women's borstal.
Oh, really?
So she must
out of the frying pan.
She's got her training early, I think.
That's right.
Now, and in the course of your life, you have met an extraordinary number, for one lady, an extraordinary number of Polish people. You seem to have a sort of proclivity or a penchant for leaning towards the Polish nation. Now, two important gentlemen passed through the hospice, did they, or through the hospice?
No, the first one I knew before the hospice ever started was when I was being a social worker.
Yeah.
And he came from the Warsaw Ghetto, he had no relatives, very few friends, and I was basically his only visitor in another hospital to which he was transferred. And he gave the idea of somewhere that could have helped him, perhaps, well, certainly more than the very busy surgical ward he was in, marvellous though the staff were trying to be.
What's his name?
His name was David Tashmer, and he died feeling there probably wouldn't be a ripple on the pool of the world that he'd been. And now he's really well known.
But you were affectionately involved with that gentleman?
I was very fond of him.
Were you in love with him?
Oh, in a way, yes.
And then there was another Polish gentleman.
Yes, that was later when I was, by that time, a doctor, and I was working, developing new ways of controlling pain at St. Joseph's Hospice. And he also came from Poland, and he just taught me more than I'd ever learned about what it really was like to be leaving life, leaving responsibilities that you felt you hadn't quite fulfilled, but yet showing the most tremendous courage and creativity right through to the end.
Now then, you're married now.
Yes.
What is the name of your husband?
My husband is Marian Bohusz, and he's another Pole. He's an artist, and I met him first because I fell in love with one of his pictures, and that's the right thing to do if you're finally going to fall in love with the artist.
And tell us the story of the picture, because you were travelling past a studio.
Yes, I was driving and doing a little window shopping as I went, quite safely, and I saw a blue crucifixion in the entrance of a gallery in the window, and I absolutely fell in love with it on the spot and stopped and went in, and I wanted a picture. I couldn't afford that big one, but I wanted a picture so badly that the gallery let me have one half price. And I wrote to the artist a few days later just to thank him for having painted such a picture.
And what happened? You got a letter back?
Well, he then said that he was going
He's
to...
looking quite bemused at the moment. Yes. He's admiring himself.
He's looking away. Hello.
Hello. You've got a letter back from him?
Yes, I got a letter back from him, and then we met, and then gradually we cooperated together, and the hospice is full of his pictures, bringing tremendous hope and light. And there is hope in a hospice, you know. A lot of people do improve, go home. It isn't only a place to die. It's very much a living place.
Right. I'm sure with you around, I'm sure it is. Why did you keep your marriage secret in the early days of it?
Well, I just felt it was rather nice to have it secret, and secondly, I'd only just become a dame, and I really didn't want sort of Dame Mary's artist all over the South London press.
The South London press?
Yes.
But quite recently, well, say 2 years ago, you won an enormous prize, which didn't get all that much publicity, did it?
No.
Just tell us what happened at that time.
Well, I'm not a publicity seeker, but I was very glad to have that money because the hospice had quite an overdraft. But in fact, it was about £92,000 when we got it, and we were rather cunning because...
When you got it, not when... I mean, you won £92,000.
But a hospice is not one person,
No,
and
right.
nor is the Templeton
But the
Prize.
award was to
it was
you.
the whole group
Yeah,
of us.
right.
And we had an account over in New York, and we put it over there, and about 3 months later, the overdraft was so frightful we had to bring it back, and by that time it was £108,000.
Good for you. And you're still wanting more money, aren't you?
Oh, always.
Thank you very much for joining us, dear Sister.